They bullied her every day because she stayed quiet and never reacted. But they never knew she was the one who would destroy everything they built and make the truth impossible to ignore. Let me really tell you what happened at Amazing Girls College. At Amazing Girls College, bullying was not new. It lived in jokes that went too far, in laughter that hurt, and in silence that protected the wrong people. Teachers saw noise as trouble, but they rarely noticed quiet pain. That was how Mallory became invisible. Mallory was a calm and intelligent girl. She spoke only when necessary and never tried to draw attention to herself. She arrived early to school, sat properly in class, and completed her work with care. Her books were always neat. Her uniform was always clean. To most people, she was just that quiet girl. But to a group of girls in her class, Mallory was an easy target. They laughed when she walked past. They pushed her slightly in the hallway and said sorry with fake smiles. When something went missing in class, fingers pointed at Mallory first. She never defended herself. She never shouted. She only lowered her head and moved on. That silence made the bullying worse. During break time, Mallory sat alone under the stairs or by the edge of the field. She watched other girls laugh together, share snacks, and take pictures. Sometimes she wanted to join them, but fear always held her back. She had learned that speaking up only brought more pain. The bullies believed Mallory was weak. They believed she had no one. They believed she would never fight back. What they did not know was that Mallory was not empty inside. She was observant. She listened carefully. She remembered things others forgot. She noticed how some students were never punished, no matter what they did. She noticed how complaints disappeared and how certain teachers avoided certain names. While others were busy laughing and showing power, Mallory was quietly understanding how the school really worked. The bullying did not stop. In fact, it became something the girls looked forward to. To them, Mallory was not a person anymore. She was a game, a joke, someone they could hurt without consequences. It started every morning before class. As Mallory walked into the classroom, one of them would whisper loudly, and the others would laugh. When she sat down, someone would kick her chair from behind. If she turned around, they pretended nothing happened. The teacher never noticed. Or maybe the teacher chose not to. During lessons, Mallory focused on her books, but even that was taken from her. Notes disappeared from her desk. Her pen went missing. Once, her homework was torn and thrown into the trash. When the teacher asked what happened, the bullies looked at Mallory and said she was careless. The teacher believed them. Mallory stopped reporting anything. She learned that speaking up only made her look like a liar, so she stayed quiet and endured it. But inside, something was changing. She began to pay attention to faces, voices, and patterns. She remembered who laughed first, who followed, and who stayed silent. One afternoon, something was happened. During group work, Mallory was accused of copying answers. The bullies told the teacher she was cheating. Mallory tried to explain, but her voice came out small. The teacher scolded her in front of the class. The room filled with whispers and smiles. That day, Mallory cried in the bathroom alone. What hurt her most was not the punishment. It was the unfairness. She knew she was innocent. She also knew the truth did not matter in a place where lies were louder than facts. As she washed her face and looked at her reflection, Mallory made a quiet decision. She would no longer waste her strength trying to explain herself to people who had already judged her. If they wanted silence, she would give them silence, but this time, it would be a different kind of silence. From that day on, Mallory began to listen more carefully than ever. She noticed conversations that stopped when teachers passed. She noticed fear behind confidence. She noticed how power worked in her school. The bullies were enjoying the game. They did not know the rules were about to change. Mallory became even quieter after the incident in class. She spoke less and avoided attention. To the bullies, it looked like she had finally accepted her place. They laughed more freely and pushed her boundaries further, convinced that she would never fight back, but Mallory was not empty inside. She was watching everything. She began to notice how certain girls behaved without fear. They spoke boldly to teachers. They broke rules and smiled while doing it. Whenever their names were mentioned, adults suddenly became careful with their words. Mallory slowly realized that bullying alone was not the real problem. Protection was. One afternoon, after lessons had ended, Mallory stayed behind in the classroom to finish copying notes she had missed. Most students had already left. The room was quiet, and the sound of pages turning filled the air. As she packed her books, she heard voices outside the classroom door. Two girls were talking and laughing. They did not know Mallory was still inside. When she heard her own name, she froze. The girls spoke openly, bragging about how no teacher would ever punish them. They laughed about their parents and the connections they had. One of them mentioned how complaints were always handled. Mallory stood still, her heart beating fast, listening to every word. That was when she understood why reporting bullying never worked. It was not because the truth was weak. It was because power was protecting lies. Later that evening, in the library, Mallory noticed a notebook left on a table. At first, she planned to return it, but curiosity made her open it. Inside were names, dates, and short notes. Some were about bullying. Some hinted at things far more serious. Mallory closed the notebook quickly and slipped it into her bag. Fear filled her chest, but so did determination. She finally had proof that what she was feeling was real. The bullies believed Mallory knew nothing. They believed silence meant defeat. They were wrong. From the day Mallory found the notebook, school felt different. Every hallway seemed louder. Every laugh sounded fake. She carried the secret with her, heavy and uncomfortable, like a stone in her bag. She did not open the notebook again at school. She was too afraid someone would see. At home, Mallory locked her door and read it slowly. Each page made her chest tighten. Names she recognized. Dates she remembered. Incidents that had been reported and quietly erased. Some of the bullies' names appeared again and again. So did the names of adults who were supposed to protect students. Mallory finally understood why certain girls felt untouchable. Their confidence was not just pride. It was safety. Someone was always cleaning up after them. The next day, the bullying continued, but it changed. The girls became sharper. Their words were softer but more dangerous. "Be careful," one whispered as she passed Mallory in the hallway. Another smiled and said, "Some people talk too much and regret it." Mallory felt fear crawl up her spine. They did not know about the notebook, but somehow, they felt something was different. Mallory started keeping her own notes. She wrote down what she saw and heard. Times, places, words. She hid her writing carefully. She knew now that memory alone was not enough. Truth needed proof. One afternoon, a younger student approached Mallory quietly. Her eyes were nervous. She asked if Mallory was okay. Before Mallory could answer, the girl whispered, "They do the same thing to me." Then she walked away quickly. Mallory stood still, shocked. She was not alone. That night, Mallory cried for the first time in weeks. Not because she was weak, but because she finally understood the truth. This was bigger than bullying. It was a system. And silence was what kept it alive. Mallory was scared. She knew speaking out could destroy her, but staying silent would destroy others. That day started like any other day at school. Students walked to class. Teachers taught lessons. Nothing felt different at first. Before lunch, a short video began to move from one phone to another. No one knew who shared it. In the video, one of the bullies was clearly heard threatening another student. She was laughing. Other girls stood beside her and agreed with her. The video was clear. The voice was clear. There was no doubt about what was happening. By lunchtime, many students had already seen it. People whispered in groups. Some looked shocked. Others looked scared. Teachers noticed the tension but did not yet know the cause. The bullies tried to act normal, but they were not calm. One of them kept checking her phone. Another kept saying the video was fake. They argued quietly among themselves. Mallory said nothing. She stayed in her seat and watched everything. She did not deny anything. She did not explain anything. She did not react. By the end of the day, the school no longer felt the same. The bullies were no longer confident. Students no longer feared them the way they used to. That evening, Mallory opened the notebook at home. The names written inside now matched what people had seen in the video. What was once hidden was now visible. Mallory closed the notebook and placed it away. She knew this was only the beginning. The bullies had chosen the wrong victim. By the next morning, many students and teachers had seen the video. It was shared widely, and it was no longer possible for the school authorities to ignore it. The girls in the video denied most of the accusations. They said the video was edited. They said people misunderstood what was said. Their parents supported them and demanded proof. The school began to realize that this case was not going to be easy. As the questions continued, more students slowly began to speak up. Some shared past experiences of being threatened or pushed. Others talked about being blamed for things they did not do. These stories were small, but together they showed a clear pattern. The school records were checked. Reports that were once ignored were brought out again. Names appeared more than once. Dates matched old complaints. The school authorities could no longer say this was a single incident. Mallory was still not called to speak. She remained quiet and focused on her studies. She did not celebrate what was happening. She did not boast. She only watched as the truth moved closer to the surface. At home, Mallory reviewed the notebook again. She did not share it with anyone. She waited. She knew the school needed to reach the truth on its own. If she spoke too soon, the focus might shift away from the real problem. By the end of the week, the school announced that the matter would be reported to higher authorities. Parents were informed that the school was reviewing its own handling of past complaints. The students felt the change. The bullies were no longer feared. They avoided attention and stayed quiet. The balance in the school had begun to shift. What started as bullying had now become a serious case, and the truth was getting closer than anyone expected. The trouble began when the bullies tried to save themselves. After the video spread, they met quietly and agreed on one plan. They would blame Mallory. They believed she was the easiest target. They told themselves that if everyone believed Mallory was behind the video, the problem would disappear. The next day, rumors started moving around the school. People said Mallory recorded the video. Others said she shared it out of anger. Some even said she edited it. Mallory heard the rumors, but she did not react. Then something unexpected happened. A student from another class came forward. She said she was the one in the video being threatened. She explained what really happened that day. She said Mallory was not there. She said Mallory had nothing to do with it. Soon after, 2 more students spoke up. They shared similar experiences with the same girls. Their stories matched. Times, places, and words were the same. The lie collapsed quickly. Teachers realized the bullies were trying to shift blame instead of telling the truth. This made the situation worse for them. The school could no longer treat it as a misunderstanding. The girls were suspended while the matter was taken further. Their parents were called in again, this time with witnesses present. Mallory was finally mentioned by name, but not as a suspect. She was cleared completely. For the first time, the bullies understood their mistake. They had chosen someone who would not panic, would not argue, and would not lie. By trying to destroy Mallory, they destroyed their own story, and the school was now forced to deal with the truth. After the suspension, the matter did not end quietly. Parents of other students demanded a full explanation. Some threatened to remove their children from the school. Meetings were held almost every day. The school could no longer protect anyone. The suspended girls were invited back, not to return to class, but to face a final decision. After reviewing statements, videos, and witness reports, the school board made its ruling. The girls were expelled. Their parents were informed formally. There were arguments and excuses, but the decision did not change. The school made it clear that bullying, threats, and lies would no longer be tolerated. The decision shocked students. Many had never seen anyone expelled before. It sent a clear message through the school. Next, the school addressed its own failure. An official apology was issued to students and parents. The school admitted that past reports were ignored and promised strict changes. A new system for reporting bullying was announced, and outside supervisors were introduced. Mallory was not mentioned publicly. Her name was kept private. The school chose to protect her peace instead of exposing her to attention. Inside, Mallory felt calm. She did not feel proud or victorious. She felt free. The fear that followed her every day was gone. Other students began to speak more openly. Some apologized to Mallory for staying silent before. Others thanked her quietly. The bullies had lost more than their status. They had lost their place, their trust, and their future in that school, and Mallory finally understood something important. Choosing silence does not always mean weakness. Sometimes, it means waiting for the truth to be strong enough to stand on its own. Life at the school slowly returned to normal. The noise, the fear, and the tension that once filled the hallways were gone. Students moved freely without looking over their shoulders. For many of them, this was the first time school felt safe. The school kept its promises. New rules were enforced, and reports of bullying were taken seriously. Teachers became more attentive, and students were encouraged to speak up. Silence was no longer treated as acceptance. Mallory continued her studies quietly. She did not become popular, and she did not seek attention. What changed was how people treated her. She was no longer ignored or mocked. She was respected. One afternoon, the younger student who once whispered thank you sat beside Mallory during break. She said she felt braver now. Mallory smiled for the first time in a long while. That smile meant more than any apology. Mallory learned an important lesson from everything she endured. Strength does not always show itself through shouting or fighting. Sometimes, strength is staying calm, paying attention, and choosing the right moment to speak. The school also learned a lesson. Protecting reputation at the expense of students causes deeper harm. When schools ignore bullying, they allow it to grow. When they listen, they protect lives. The bullies chose Mallory because they thought she was weak. They believed she would stay silent forever. What they did not know was that silence, when guided by truth and patience, can change everything. This story teaches us something clear and simple. Never judge someone by how quiet they are, and never mistake silence for weakness, because sometimes, bullies choose the wrong victim, and the truth is what finally stops them.